Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to episode 5 of The Mind Behind right here on Love Wrestling. Thank you for joining us, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on Twitch, whether you are on YouTube, whether you're listening to the audio or whether you're catching a replay somewhere. It is always appreciated when you take the time amongst the thousands of hours of wrestling content out there to come and spend time with two individuals contributing to the zeitgeist. And today, as per usual, friends, I am joined by one of the best, one of the brightest, one of my favorites, and a great individual doing great things in professional wrestling. Rick Ucchino joining me, and God, it is great to see you face to face. We were talking before this, like we've only officially met for the last 10 minutes. So it's good, like we've been saying a lot to a lot of the people coming on the show, to finally put a face to a name. How are you doing? And welcome to Love Wrestling for the first time.
You know what? I'm usually the one who's getting commented on my introductions, but that was very, very good, Spencer. I appreciate it, man.
I'll take it.
You don't feel like you have to kiss up to me at all. Like I am definitely like fifth in your Rolodex here. You said this is episode 5. I am nowhere near on the level of the Warren Hayeses and Alicia Touts and Gary Cassidy's of the world, but I do appreciate you taking some time out to talk to me today.
Well, and I appreciate for you as well, man, especially I know you've been busy today. We're going to get to a clip from your interview and give a little bit of a Rick exclusive. I was trying to find a pun, but I couldn't get there, hence my struggling over it. But before we get to the interview part, got to give a quick shout out to everybody hopping in. Ed, I couldn't agree with you more, man. This is going to be a fun interview. I am always excited to chat to some of the brightest minds in wrestling content creation. Sam, it is good to see you as well. I can't speak for Rick. I hope he's doing well hopping on the show, but I'm doing great, and it is great to see you as always, friend. Wrestling plug, five-time Mind Behind. Absolutely, friend. Good to see you. And Tom,
you dig it.
Putting it best. A true unsung hero of wrestling media right there, and I couldn't agree more. But as I mentioned, a guy doing a lot who has done a lot, and let's start right at the beginning of that. Friend, you've mentioned to me you've been in radio for 11, 12 years at this point, not even just strictly in professional wrestling, but in sports overall. Was radio always the goal? Was broadcasting always the goal? Or how did you maybe stumble into it?
Yeah, like everything that happens in my life, purely accidental. I went into college and I had no earthly idea what I wanted to do for a living. My first semester and a half, I think I had like 6 majors, and that includes like philosophy. Like, come on, what the hell? It is a crime that they send 18 and 19-year-old kids to college and say, here, go figure out the next 40 years of your life.
Here's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Pay it back when you get organized. At 18.
Still paying those loans back. Still paying them back 12 years later.
2 of us are in that boat, don't worry.
I've been at the University of Cincinnati in 10, 15 years, but here we are. Or actually 13 years. Excuse me, my math is
well, and here's the fun question for you. How many times have they sent you the email saying, please donate?
I'm still donating. That's my... I'm still paying off interest. You'll get your money when you get it. That's pretty much my thought process behind that. But yeah, it wasn't long at all into my sophomore year where I realized that 4-year school was just not for me. And honestly, one day I was just listening to Mike and Mike on ESPN radio in the morning and waiting for them to talk about the Bengals. And then they finally did. I'm from Cincinnati, by the way. So waiting for them to talk about the Bengals, and they finally did. And it was like 15 seconds long. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, God, get me in there and let me do that. And it was like the light kind of went off. So after some convincing my parents, it took a lot of convincing to get my parents to let me into broadcasting school. I went, I was out in 10 months, graduated top of my class, got hired in my first job the day I graduated, and the rest, as they say, is history. So that's how I ended up in radio and in this crazy world, somehow still kicking it like 12 years later.
How are your parents feeling about it now that you've had some great opportunities, at least in the professional wrestling sense of things? Again, I always want to hype what people are doing inside the proverbial squared circle. How are their thoughts on your career now?
And I'm sure you probably didn't know this, but unfortunately my dad did pass away recently, back in February. So it's been kind of a rough couple of months, but I know he was proud of me because like literally anywhere that we would go, right, whether it was family or this, that, and the other thing, he had to tell people that I was on the radio. Like,
dude, that's
he's
awesome.
Like,
That's awesome.
He's on the radio. It's like my first 6 months into it, I remember him saying, well, you've already gone further than I thought you would. And I'm like, well, thanks, Dad. That's kind of like a backhanded compliment there. But that was
I kind of maybe appreciate that.
Yeah, that was just Dad. That was who it is. And like when I got on at WLW, which is the radio station that I work for, still full time to this day. I'm the morning news co-anchor there. It's the highest rated news talk radio station in the country. Guaranteed, you can look it up. And I'm the morning co-anchor, and that is really a really big deal. And that was something that I know he was really happy with. And I've been there for going on 8 years now, and still enjoy doing that work in the morning. So, yeah, it's not just it's news by day and wrestling media by night over here. So it's definitely a double life that I'm leaving right now.
Did you, at least I know in Canadian media and the people I've spoken to, they've had to move around a lot. They've had to take off. It seems like you've been based in Cincy pretty well the whole time, hey?
Yes, and it's rare. I have lived in Cincinnati my entire life. I've never had to leave. Now, I've had conversations about leaving. I have had 2 jobs that I thought I was going to get that I ended up finishing second in that could have taken me to Kansas City or Cleveland. And my life would have ended up completely differently. But no, I've been lucky that I have worked at 4 radio stations in my entire life, and all of them are based in Cincinnati, in my home market. I am a big Cincinnati guy. Reds, Bengals, Bearcats, Skyline, Chili. I'm all about it. And yeah, that's and I'm very lucky in that sense that I have not had to leave home, and I've never really had aspirations of leaving home and going elsewhere. I genuinely love being here, and I want to raise my family here. So it's been nice that at age 33, I'm still able to be here and doing what I'm doing.
I was going to say put over Cincinnati in 60 seconds or less, but you did a damn good job of it. Well done.
Follow our sports teams. It just ends in heartache. It really does. I'm 33 years old. The only championship I've seen was in 1990, and I was 2. So it's hell.
For what it's worth, like as a big hockey fan, I'm not sure if you're a big hockey fan, but as an Edmonton Oilers fan, I love them to death. There was a tough 13 years in there that I had to take a little bit of a pounding from the proverbial hockey world. You know, I used to look, and again, God love them, the Cleveland Browns I used to look at and be like, how can you be a fan of that? And then I'd go and suffer through 82 games a season. So I really have no right to judge.
It's a
love-hate
relationship. It's a love-hate relationship. We love them, and they hate us. That's how it works.
I've never heard it put better. Sam hopping in. Speaking of the Bengals, Rick, how'd you think they did in the draft? Also, badass name. Well done.
Okay.
I'll take
That's
it.
honestly the first time I've ever heard that, so I'll take the compliment. I
will also throw in here, I will have no insight to add to this. I will have absolutely no draft insight. I'll just completely agree with you. And if you're taking heat, it means we're both taking heat.
Right. I was happy because I was 100% on board with Team Chase. I wanted them to draft Jamar Chase. I wanted them to add that dynamic playmaking wide receiver to take the 104 targets that AJ Green was getting last year and couldn't do anything with last year with Joe Burrow. I think it's really going to open up the offense. I get the argument for Team Sewell, but the offensive line class in my position was, in my opinion, was a lot deeper than the wide receiver class. So I liked taking Chase at 5 and then getting Jackson Carman in the second round, trading back in a couple 4th round picks. And true statement, Jackson Carman, the Bengals second round pick, and myself went to the same high school. So I'm all for it.
There is a good one. I'll get to my next after this. I just got a good laugh, to be honest with you. I've been a Bengals fan and now a Browns fan most of my adult life. It's brutal. Yeah.
Brutal is an understatement.
I was trying to find a kind way to, you just got to cut through that one. That one's got to hurt, to be quite honest. Favorite sport to cover outside of professional wrestling? Maybe coverage and watching are 2 different things. So if they're the same, then it's one answer. And if they're 2 different, give me 2 different.
You know, the one year that I really got to cover the Reds was like the best summer ever. It was 2013. So it was a year that they were actually good. Or no, maybe it was 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. It was the year they had Shin-Soo Choo in center field, and it was 2012 because they were supposed to win that year, and then they didn't. But it was a really, really fun year.
Well, the world was supposed to end that year too, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. It was a really fun year. I was getting paid to go to baseball games and then, talk about them. It was a job that I was not even remotely prepared for, but it was an upstart station that was going to pay me money. So they let me screw up on the job, basically, which has been my entire career is failing upward. So it was definitely a fun summer back then. And, I was really, really enjoying that job. And we went from the Red season right into Bengal season. And I was in the middle of covering training camp, and it was the year they were on Hard Knocks. And then one day they decided they didn't want to put money into the station anymore. And after 7 months, they fired all of us. So that was a really quick pullback and an ugly chapter in the radio world, because you will get flipped and you will get fired very, very fast.
It's happened a couple of times up here recently as far as TSN and all of that goes to some of their major stations. Like, not really something I can comment on because I certainly have an opinion, but have no idea how the inner workings of it works. And frankly, I've got no interest in how the sausage is made when it comes to the negative side of things as far as that goes. When did you start to get into professional wrestling coverage? It's been a couple of years. You've worked a couple of great places. It's not like, you talk about starting with sort of the fledgling stations. You've worked with some great professional wrestling journalist coverage. I don't know. I'm trying to find a word. Journalism is sometimes a word that is applied very loosely to pro wrestling. But when did you get into her? So again, complete fluke. So, and this kind of goes back to my, and buckle in, this is going to be a long story. So this kind of goes back to my radio days, where after I got fired from the radio station that flipped, I ended up doing news. And I wasn't a news guy at the time. I was a sports guy who got pulled from training camp and ended up covering a mayoral election. I couldn't tell you what an incumbent was back then. I had no knowledge of it whatsoever. And I'm just thrust into this job because I sounded good. Like, that was it. It was, okay, you sound good on the air and we'll train you the rest. And it was basically 3 years until I was comfortable enough knowing what the hell I was doing. Like I said, I've been there for 8 now. So these last 5 have been a breeze compared to the other 3. But at the time, I still had aspirations of being a sports talk show host. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I was about a year or so in there, there was another guy there who wanted to do a weekend sports talk show. I decided to weasel my way in there and do it with him. And they allowed us to do it on the weekends for free. Wasn't getting any money for it at all. I was working 2 to 10 every day, barely seeing my fiance / wife at the time. And then I was working the weekends, and she was also working weekends. And to put it lightly, the show was awful. Just flat out awful. We sucked. Most first shows are, though. There's not a lot of lightning in a bottle with the first show. It wasn't my first show. It was my first show at that station. It was a 50,000 watt flamethrower, home of the Bengals. We would get calls from people who told us how bad we sucked. And honestly, it just destroyed my confidence. It would have to. It crushed me. My whole life, I've never grown up with a high self-esteem or, confidence in myself. And at that point, I was just demoralized to the point where I was happy when we got canceled. Like, seriously, when we got canceled, it was the happiest day of my life, because at that point I was like, all right, I've tried everything I can do in sports. I'm done. I'm never doing this again. I'm not cut out for it. I can't be a talk show host. It's over. Sort of let it go at that point. Right. And I was content with that. And I was like, all right, but I'm really good at news. Like, somehow I've turned out to be really, really good at news. I'm going to stick in the newsroom and everything was going to be fine. I could do this for the rest of my life. And 3 years went by. I did no hosting, none whatsoever. I was content with my place in the world. And then I don't know, man, like, it was one of those instances where I started to get stuck, because at the time at LW, we had so many people there who had been there for 20, 30 plus years. There was no moving up. There was none. So I was basically still working. There's that famous incumbent word that you run into again. Yeah. After like 4 years at the station, I'm still working overnights. I'm still working 2 to 10 shifts and not seeing my family. And I'm stuck at like a dead end. And I just kind of wanted to give up altogether at that point. And it was around the same time that things kind of finally started rolling for me, where we had a couple people who retired. And all of a sudden now I was moving into finally a new time slot, and it opened things up, and I was seeing my family more.
And I don't know, man. I was listening to Mo Egger one day, who was our great afternoon show host on ESPN 1530 from 3 to 6. And he was talking with his producer at the time, whose name is Taryn Bland. And they started talking about pro wrestling. And I have been a pro wrestling fan since 1998. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, my interest is peaked. Don't hear this on the radio very often. And then they started talking back and forth, and all of a sudden they started getting calls. They started getting calls left and right about, what wrestling back in the 80s and who Mo likes and this, that, and the other thing. And finally Mo was like, Taryn, you should just start up your own talk radio show. Just do a wrestling show on the station. And Taryn was like, yeah, whatever, and dismissed it. And I'm sitting there. And again, if I'm not in the car at that time, I don't hear that. I don't hear that at all. It goes unnoticed, and I wouldn't be sitting here.
Totally different path right now. Yeah.
Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, am I starting to get the bug again? Because that idea, my mind started racing again.
Got the earworm.
But I still didn't have any confidence in myself. And this is a story that I've only told a couple of people, but there is one person in the professional wrestling world that I can thank, honestly, and this may sound dumb, I don't know, that can honestly, I can give credit for me being here right now, and it's Becky Lynch. And it's because this was right around 2018 where, she really started catching fire again. And she had won the SmackDown Women's Championship for the second time. And I've been a Becky Lynch fan since the tap dancing days, the Irish jig days back in NXT. Like I'm one of those people online who was like, put this damn girl on television. Why is she in catering back, 2017 and early 2018? I drove up to Columbus to watch her at Fastlane only for her to eat the pin in a useless tag team match. All right. Like I have been hurt by
You've had the best and the worst of her.
Yes. And she has been, without a doubt, one of my favorites moving up. I've never been more connected to a professional wrestler before, with the exception of maybe John Moxley. And there's a Cincinnati connection there, obviously.
Yeah, you got to have the hometown for it, right?
He was my favorite, but I think Becky was always right there as the top. And I can't even remember the outlet she did it with, but she did an interview where she was talking about after she won the title for the first time in 2016, how she had absolutely no confidence in herself. Like she didn't think that she deserved it. She felt apologetic for being there every time that she was out in the ring and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just like,
almost like the imposter syndrome of it. Hey.
Right. And I'm sitting there, I'm like going, okay, hold the F on, because I'm like, somebody as talented and as just overall great as you are, you couldn't see the potential in yourself. You couldn't see what you could be and what you were. And honestly, I think that was the catalyst. That was the fire that kind of lit it back under me. Like, do I give this one final shot? And so one day I passed Taryn in the hallway, the producer from Mo Egger, and I said, were you serious about that wrestling show idea? And he was like, absolutely. Young, hungry guy. And so you're like, all right, let's do this thing. So we put together a demo. We sent it to the higher ups. And much to my surprise, they said yes. They said, yes, we'll do it. We'll throw it on the air. We'll give you guys one live show a month, which basically it was doing pay-per-views. So the first one we did was the 2019 Royal Rumble, which was won by Becky Lynch, which was won by, no, that wasn't, I'm sorry. Kofi Kingston didn't win that one, but that was the same year that Kofi won the title. Kofi was Taryn's favorite guy. So we start getting into wrestling media the second that both of our favorites start catching fire. And it was like
can't find a better time to do it.
Right. And it was perfect. So we were doing a weekly podcast on top of the monthly pay-per-view specials. And we weren't very good to start off, but we got better. And I was hooked up with people like Sean Rossap who were willing to come on. And occasionally we would get a guest. The first ever person we interviewed from WWE was Natalya, because they were in Cincinnati for Raw, and she was fantastic. Yeah. She spent 20 minutes with us. And I
don't think you need to convince an Albertan about how great Natalya is. Don't get me wrong there.
Fantastic, lovely human being. First WWE superstar I've ever met in person, and I would love to chat with her again one day. But it's like all these little things started rolling and started clicking. And there's also one other person that I have to mention as a reason for where I'm at right now, and that is Tom Collihue. This is a guy that I reached out to on Twitter a long time ago, said, hey, look, I saw a report that you did. Will you please come on the show? And he was like, absolutely. I had no clue he was in London or overseas. I had no clue where he was. I just saw this report and I reached out to him and he's like, oh yeah, I'm overseas. I'm in the UK. I'm like, oh, that's a 5-hour difference. This is going to be awkward, but it worked out. And, we just started conversing and, we're still friends to this day. And one day down the line, it was right around the time they're doing the WWE draft. I'm sitting here just for the hell of it, because I was bored one day putting up together a mock draft and I had nowhere to publish it. He was like, do you want to put it on Sportskeeda? And I'm like, would they do that? And then within hours, I'm now being brought on as a feature writer for Sportskeeda. And
cool.
Seriously, man, the rest is history. Like, it seems like every other month now, my role is changing at Sportskeeda Wrestling, and I'm doing like 19 other different things. And now I'm one of their main YouTubers. I'm one of their main interviewers. I'm interviewing WWE superstars every other week. It's unfortunately the radio show in Cincinnati was a COVID casualty. We lost our sponsor, because eventually we did get to, at the beginning of 2020, we got to doing a show every week. Like, it got so good that they put us on every week. We got a sponsor. We were doing every Tuesday night after Raw before the Wednesday Night Wars. It was perfect. We were still doing our pay-per-view special. And then COVID hit. We lost our sponsor and we lost the show, unfortunately. But Terrence's still kicking it at 1530, producing for Mo. He's doing great. He's doing his DJ stuff. So he's taken off in his own right. And I've been able to branch off to do the wrestling stuff at Sportskeeda exclusively. And yeah, it's all one massive fluke. Like, it's like the end of Avengers Endgame. Like, every single thing had to happen in that perfect order. Like, if the damn rat doesn't hit the remote control to free Ant-Man, like, I'm not sitting here talking to you today. So that's my long ass story of how I got into wrestling journalism.
That is a hell of a story, and Ed, I couldn't have put it any better. That's a hell of an interesting route, my friend. Hell of an interesting route. You mentioned talking to a couple of WWE superstars. We're going to get to a quick little, not just clip. We're throwing an exclusive up here for you fans of the Mind Behind. But I also want to make sure that I do my proper diligence, or my proper honor to the people who are helping us out. Throwback Reese wanted to thank you guys both for subscribing yourself, and Throwback for gifting some subs out there, including, ironically enough, to Tom Collihue himself. Tom, good to see you in the chat as well. Throwback, thanks for sticking around. You guys are all appreciated. As I've said a couple of times on this and a couple of the other shows that we do here, there's a lot of wrestling programming out there, and it's appreciated when you take the time to tune in on Love Wrestling. So for doing that, we're going to throw a little exclusive your way. Rick threw this out on social media a couple of minutes prior to hopping on here. So we're going to throw this your way. Then, Rick, I'm going to just let you sort of speak on what you're doing right now, what you've got coming up in the future, and then just a couple more questions for you as we close her out in the Mind Behind. Here's Rick and one of your favorites. It's Bailey.
And last night we saw a return vignette for one Eva Marie, referred to herself as the super role model. And I was immediately like, I wonder how Bailey feels about that. And as luck would have it, here I am talking to you the very next day. And I know you got a couple of shots out there on social media, but how'd you feel about that one?
Well, it was, I have to say I guess I was surprised, but it's like, there's people out there that call themselves the role model, and now there's another one, and now it's just to the point where I was nice and I let one slide, but I'm not letting this slide. She's coming back into my world. We have a past, we have a history. I've wrestled Eva Marie so many times, and I've actually had a lot of fun with her. She was one of my favorite people to be in the ring with. But that don't mean I'm going to let you come in here and try to be the role model of WWE, because there's only one. There's the one. And it's Bailey. So she's going to have to try to think of another name, all pink everything or something. But if you want to fight for the name, we could do that too.
I loved it. That was one of the first tweets, I think, that just came up in my timeline when Eva first made her return, was sort of the sarcastic, how's she going to be all red everything anymore? And of course, it's all pink everything now. It quite literally is that easy. We got a couple of questions in the comments for you before we start to pick your brain on maybe some favorites, maybe some stuff like that. But of course, I want to give some positive shout outs from Tom Hoppin this way. I've never known anyone to work as hard as Rick. You've earned everything you've gained, sir, and there'll be plenty more to come, I'm sure. That, my friend, is something that I can just simply vouch for. There is no need for me to try and out-eloquent a statement like that, for lack of a better way to put it. Throwback hopping in. So you talked about Becky. What do you expect with Becky coming back, and what do you expect from her, I would assume, after returning?
Man, that's so hard to pinpoint, right? Because it's like we've already had she's going to come back at the Royal Rumble. No, she's not. Oh, well, she's going to come back at WrestleMania. I'm like, probably not. Do you guys realize she's only like 4 months, postpartum? That's a tough ask. No, she didn't. I honestly, I don't know. I know what I would like to see happen, and that's conveniently enough, I would like to see her get in a program with Bayley, because we haven't seen those two have an elongated, heated, passionate rivalry on Raw or SmackDown. It doesn't even need to be for a damn title. It's just as simple as I left when I was on top. Bayley's been the MVP of the pandemic era. I'm coming back to claim my podium. You're in my way. Let's go. And I did ask Bayley about that, and you'll have to wait until my interview with her comes out tomorrow to get her answer on it.
And you guys are also going to have to wait till the end of the show to find out where you can do that, because we save all of our plugs for the end. Haha, everybody, bumping up our view hours. Obviously, you've talked about her a ton, so maybe you've telegraphed it a little bit if you haven't had the chance to chat with her already. But is Becky Lynch the dream interviewer, or there may be a couple on that list still? Or who would you consider some people you're still looking forward to talking to? And then conversely, who are some that you've really enjoyed speaking with in the past?
Yeah, so Becky is hands down the dream top creme de la creme interview. Like, there's I really don't get like nervous before interviews anymore. I used to a lot, and I used to love that feeling, because it's like, okay, I'm doing something cool here, and it's there would be that like nervous energy in the air, and it kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm talking to Santos Escobar today, and I'm talking to Mercedes Martinez today, and it kind of became routine. I got woken up a little bit with that nervous energy for Bayley, because I think Bayley, I would put her right at the top of the pedestal of the people that I've talked to. And it was kind of cool to get that feeling again today, to have that nervous energy. And then once you start talking, it just goes. And Bayley was at the top of that list of people that I wanted to talk to. So when I got the email that said, hey, can you talk to Bayley? I could not pick up my phone and fat thumb that.
I will be doing that. Yes, please.
Yeah. At what time? Midnight? Okay, I'll figure it out. But yeah, it's still Becky at the top of the list. I want to be able to tell her that story that I told to her in person one day. So I'm hoping that will happen. I'm actually trying to work my way through several factions right now. So I have talked to John Moxley. So I still have 2/3 of the Shield that I want to do with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. I am 2/3 of the way.
What about Kurt Angle? You're missing a member.
Kurt Angle's up there too, man. I'd love to talk to Kurt. But I'm 2/3 of the way through New Day, so I got to get Xavier Woods at some point. And I am finally on the scoreboard with the 4 horsewomen. Bayley was my first one, so I still got 3 others to go. Obviously, Becky at the top of that list. No disrespect to the other 2. As far as people that I've talked to that I think were absolute favorites, Bayley was great. But man, I think if I'm going to pick anybody, and this is not like a knock on anybody else. I've never had
it's nothing against everything 4 is the way I've always put her.
I will talk to Damian Priest every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That guy is as open and honest and candid and cool and funny about literally everything. It is the easiest interview I have ever had to do in my life. I've been blessed to do it twice so far this year. If you've missed them, I'll tell you at the end of the show where you can find them. But yeah, man, I had a blast. Like right after WrestleMania, I got to talk to Damian Priest, and we're just sitting there talking about his match with Bad Bunny. And that's when he like just casually dropped, oh yeah, the Canadian Destroyer. We taught him that the day before WrestleMania. And I'm just sitting here, I'm going, What? You did what? You did, huh? Okay. That's insane. And I know there'll be
the confidence to bust that out.
I know there'll be people out there who say, oh, the Canadian Destroyer is not that hard. Screw off. All right. You're talking about a guy who's been training for 3 months who did it like the day.
That's exactly it. Do one. Just go do one. Yeah. If you can tell me one's not hard, do it.
Exactly. But yeah, Damian Priest is up there. I've had the pleasure of talking to Drew McIntyre 3 times already, and he's always great. He's very open and honest. Yeah, anybody who's just, very, lack of a better term, open and honest, and is willing to talk about, like, spent the mind behind, right? Like I love talking to the person behind the character. By the way, one dream interview that I would have to do, gotta knock it off the bucket list one day is Bray Wyatt. But I want to talk to
I
want to talk to William Rotunda about Bray Wyatt. I don't want to talk to Bray Wyatt. I think I'd be a little too scared to do that one. But I want
a little too on the nose.
I want to dive into that mind at some point. And I may have to wait until he's no longer with WWE at some point, but that's one I got to do.
That, I think you speak for every interviewer on that one. I really, really do think you do. That guy's just like, whether you love what he's doing or dislike what he's doing, I'm personally in the very, very much the former category. There's got to be a million things anybody would want to ask of him, right? Throwback hopping back in. Also, with SummerSlam venues up in the air, do you see it coming back to Boston? The idea of a pay-per-view at Fenway is interesting.
I'd love it. I would like to make my personal pitch for Cincinnati, though. It has not. We have not had a pay-per-view since Cyber Sunday 2006. So if we're going to do any kind of stadium show or baseball show, we got Great American Ballpark. We got Paul Brown Stadium. We can pack 45,000 standing room only. Please, for the love of God, I'll take a damn payback. Just bring me a pay-per-view to Cincinnati. It's all I'm asking. But I do think, according to the reports, the front runner for SummerSlam is New York right now.
Which is definitely not something I'm opposed to whatsoever. And you want to talk about like Cyber Sunday? We haven't had one. I think it was Backlash 03 was the pay-per-view that we last had here in Edmonton. And even then, house shows like maybe one a year is what we get, which is frustrating.
We'll get back before the world ended. We would get like 2 shows a year. We would get like a Raw or a SmackDown, or one year we got Raw and we got technically our pay-per-view. We got the what was it? Oh man.
Roadblock Starcade. End of the line.
We got the Starcade house show. And
how was that?
And it was good. It was good. I will swear up and down that Ric Flair was inebriated when he went out there to cut his promo. But hitting on the girls in the front row, but it's Ric Flair. It is what it is. It was still a good show, still a good promo. But it was definitely an interesting night, but I would love to get some more marquee shows in Cincinnati, right? So like Fastlane was the big one for 2 years in a row. We had it in Ohio. It was up in Columbus. It was up in Cleveland. And I'm sitting there going, all right, next year, it's our year. No,
we got it.
Didn't even do Fastlane. They went to Saudi Arabia instead.
Talk about a slap in the face, eh?
And that was the same show that Bray Wyatt lost to Goldberg, and I lost my you-know-what. So, yeah, overall, it was just a bad experience that month.
Well, my friend, fortunately, for at least myself, I can speak for, but I like to thank you as well. I've had a really, really great time today. Unlike that, perhaps pay-per-view went for you. It's appreciated as all hell when you take the time for me. It is appreciated as hell how much you've supported Love Wrestling. And hopefully I can say that we've done at least a little bit of the same on your end. But mostly, man, I'm glad to call you a friend and I'm glad you hopped on today. If anybody wants to check out that interview with Bailey, anything you've got coming up in the near future, my friend, the platform is all yours. I'm even going to give you the big screen to do it.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Yes. My interview with Bailey will drop tomorrow morning on the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube channel. So go to YouTube and you can follow us there at Sportskeeda Wrestling. Make sure to subscribe. We have a lot of weekly content, a lot of post Raw and SmackDown review shows that we do. We do breaking news videos. We started up a new podcast recently, myself and Kev Kellum, who's a fellow iHeart Radio alum out of Chicago. Our first episode was just this past week. It's called The Inside Cradle. Comes out every Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. The audio version comes out at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Spotify and soon to be where you can find Apple Podcasts as well. So all the Sportskeeda stuff that we're doing, again, you can go to the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. You will find access to all of that. Of course, if you want exclusive clips like the one I shared out with Bailey that you were kind enough to play earlier, please follow me on Twitter. I am trying to build up that following as much as I can, and it has been a slow burn. I am sad to say. My goal is to hit 2,000 followers by the end of the year. I'm currently sitting at like 1,870. So if I can get that 130 extra, that would be really great. That would be a tip of my cap. And if anybody out there knows how to get me verified, that would be great too, to hit me up on that one.
If you get that info before I do, please pass it on to me as
I
well.
will.
I don't know how anxious they are to, just verify everybody who's paid a WordPress subscription as I have in my case. So
I get it. I get it. But
at
yeah,
least you've got the need for it. You're a media personality. I'm some guy who paid a couple $100 for WordPress.
Right? I got call letters next to my name, man. Like I'm sitting here with news people out of like Davenport, Iowa. Not that there's anything wrong with Davenport, Iowa, but news people out of Davenport with like 300 followers who are verified. And I'm just sitting here going, really? Okay, that's cool. That's fine.
It's probably just pressing a button for you, Jack. You can do it, Mr. Twitter.
Right. Yes, exactly. But my Twitter handle is at Rick Ucchino. That's the @ symbol RICKUCCHINO. I live tweet during Raw and SmackDown and any other shows that I can. I try to do it during AEW, but Spencer, if I can talk about it, I do work with another company that we have not mentioned yet that I want.
Of course you can.
JCY Videos, Spencer. We are an up and start company here that is doing live professional wrestling house shows out of Franklin, Ohio. And the gentleman who owns and runs the company is Jimmy Wang Yang, and he is also my trainer. I have been doing pro wrestling training.
I was gonna say I saw some very fun videos of you.
Yes,
that you commentated too, which was excellent.
that was Jimmy's idea. I was like, all right, I'll call my own matches. That's fine. Jimmy has been really, really great. He's one of these guys that I interviewed him back when we had the radio show in Cincinnati, and I interviewed his daughter who is trying to get into pro wrestling, Jazzy Yang. And I think she has a lot of potential, a lot of talent, and I can't wait to see what she does. And I can't wait to say one day that I trained with Jazzy Yang. Like that's how highly I think of her. So yeah, I'm waiting for that. Cool. I'm waiting for that day to say I knew her when. But Jimmy's this guy who I interviewed him, and then several months went by. He literally calls me out of the blue because he started listening to the show. Cool. And he calls me up and he says, hey, look, I want to teach you about wrestling. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, because right now you sound too much like a fan. And I want to show you inside the industry and maybe, wisen you up a little bit because you're starting to get some big time guests and I don't want you to look foolish.
Give you that look behind the curtain. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, wow, blown away. Appreciate it. And then the world ended. So that was like February 2020. And then everything crashed. But right around June, he sends me that text and says, hey, I'm starting up training again. And I'm like, all right, I'll come down one day. That's what I said. I'll come down one day and see what this is all about. And he put me through the ringer, man, like that day. Like I'm not in shape at all. Still not trying to get there.
Well, and I'm sure if he thought he was only getting one day, he's going to give you at least more than 1 days of experience.
He didn't think he was getting one day. He knew he wasn't getting one day out of me because my plan was to do the one day and then do an interview with him and talk with him about it. And he was like, get through a month first and then we'll do the interview. It has now been 10 months. Still haven't done that interview. And I'm going twice a week. And, but at the same time, he had this grandmaster plan. And it's also something that I really, really appreciated because he was like, hey, look, I'm going to start putting these videos up. I want to do live shows. You're a 10-year, 12-year broadcast professional. Do you think you could do commentary? And I'm like, I have no clue, but Jimmy, I will try. And I've been doing commentary for JCY now for a few months. I do the ring announcing on the live shows. And, he's happy with it. He's bringing me along there. And all of a sudden, I have now found a love for commentary and, that I didn't know that I would have. So now all of a sudden I'm sitting here going, man, if I could get to WWE one day, that would be really freaking cool. So that's the ultimate dream. What I'm working on right now is trying to do as much commentating and, play-by-play calling as I can for pro wrestling. And I got a guy like Jimmy Yang who's willing to teach me, everything that he knows. And, we're going to start branching out here for JCY and heading out to some of the local territories here and there. We also did just crown our first ever JCY champion. That video is up. Please follow us on Twitter. That is at JVideos LLC, at JVideos LLC. And you can see who won our first ever world title. We crowned the first ever King of Cincinnati recently. Really, really fun tournament. Like I said, I do the commentary and the play-by-play for now. But the goal, one day, Spencer, this year, I will step in and make my professional wrestling debut at some point.
Very cool, man. And I cannot wait to have you back on again after that, before that, and many more times in between and after, man. It's been an absolute blast having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time for me because, again, like when you got the opportunity to chat to Bailey a little earlier today, I'm not burying myself in the kindest way to me, but I'm an objective downgrade on that end of things. So it's always appreciated, man. Of course,
I will politely agree. I will politely agree.
Damn it, man. I was fishing for a show's over. No, I gotta throw a couple shouts to the individuals in the comments there, Tom. I was sat in a pub in London when Wyatt lost that title, and I have never known my phone to blow up quite like that. You were so furious. Well, that now makes two of us after that.
You should have seen me in person.
Ed throwing the follow on Twitter. Shots fired at Seth Rollins and Davenport.
Oh,
you can get him, I suppose, sometimes.
No. Anytime I think of like small town, I don't know why, but Davenport, Iowa is just like what pops into my head. I could say Paducah, Kentucky, and it would have the same effect to me. So I don't know.
It's like Bugs Bunny always talking about Albuquerque. Right? Like you find somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, Volkmar316 hopping in. Hey guys, this is really entertaining. Glad to found you. Thank you. That means a lot. It genuinely does. I can't stress that enough. It means a lot that you take the time again and tune in. I know you've hopped into a couple of the streams recently, so thank you for the continued support and wrestling plug thrown out with my favorite emote that you'll find. Just a handsome face. There it is. Rick, it's been great to have you. Run through those social media plugs one more time if you can, both for you, the video end, the radio end, anything else that you want to, because I said we're going to save it for the end of the show. So let's make sure we at least get them out there one more time so we can get you to those 2,000 followers.
Yes, absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at Rick Ucchino, RICKUCCHINO, just as you see it spelled on the screen. Follow Sportskeeda Wrestling on Facebook and Twitter and the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. That's where all of my interviews for Sportskeeda Wrestling get uploaded. And yes, also please follow us, J Videos LLC. Keep an eye on that page in particular if you want to see me make my pro wrestling debut later on this year, because it will be uploaded to the JCY videos page on Twitter.
I would highly suggest it, friends. Show some support to some great individuals. If you're on Twitch watching this, then we're going to continue to do that even despite our stream ending. Ditz is rating, and you talk about great individuals. He is a great individual. So if you're on Twitch, you're going to see that raid button hopping up in a couple of seconds. If you guys are tuned in on Facebook or YouTube, thank you once again for tuning into The Mind Behind. This Friday, we've got Ella J coming your way. Nice. The Mind Behind a wrestling gal. She is an absolutely phenomenal individual doing great things for not just women's wrestling, but pro wrestling overall. It's nice to be able to repeat myself as far as that goes with my guests, whether it's Rick, Gary, Alicia, Warren, and anybody else that I'm going to have on here in the future, Magsy as well. You guys mean a lot to me. You guys do great things, just as Ditz does. So stick around for that. We'll see you on that side, on the Twitch side of things. If you guys are on Facebook and YouTube, you go and hear the music. We'll see you soon on The Mind Behind.
See you guys.